Well, hello there, ladies and gents. Robert Sykes, KetoSavage.com. Let me get a sip of coffee real quick. By the way, I got a frother for heavy cream, which makes your coffee so much more full-bodied and tasty. So if, like, you're in a contest prep, you're in a caloric deficit, and you want to really enjoy your coffee, it makes a little bit of cream stretch out a little bit longer. But anyways, today is the video on week 8 of the contest prep. And I want to talk a little bit about two different things. This happens to be the week of Christmas, Christmas Eve, all the festivities therein. I've spent a lot of time with family this week. I went over to my parents for Christmas Eve, then we all went over to my grandparents for Christmas Day. And this whole time, everybody's got all the food that they have. I mean, we had ribeyes that were grilled when I went over to my folks' house for Christmas Eve. At my grandparents' house, had all kinds of, like a smorgasbord. My dad deep fried 2 turkeys, which is delicious. And the thing is, I didn't eat any of that stuff. It's all good. I could definitely have made it keto. I didn't have to indulge in the carbs. I didn't have to indulge in anything, and I didn't, because my goal for being the best that I can be at this contest prep is my priority over that moment in time, that finite enjoyment that you get from eating at one of these festivities. And I don't want this to turn into like a strict mindset episode, because I want to give you some tangible things to work with here. But at the same time, I feel like this is huge, because so much of a contest prep is mindset. This is a mental sport. It's a mental challenge. And it's easy for people to prep for 4, 5, 6 months and like justify going off track and saying, "Oh, I've got plenty of time. Let's just deviate a little bit and enjoy this moment." And for me, that's a no-go. Like, when I flip the switch and I say, "Okay, I'm doing a contest prep," I'm doing a contest prep, and I'm not taking any chances. I'm not leaving anything to chance. I'm controlling as many variables as I can, and I'm not tipping on the edge. I'm not walking that razor's edge, because I don't want to be filled with regret at the end of it all if it doesn't go my way, if I don't know that I've brought the best conditioning, best package, best presentation possible to the show. Then I start backtracking, thinking about all the things that I could have done different, should have done different, would have done different. And I don't want to have to think about a moment in time of like, oh, back on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, I shouldn't have had that turkey. I shouldn't have had those ribeyes. I shouldn't have exceeded my macros by X amount. And for me, that's a worthwhile sacrifice, because then I can know at the end of the day, no matter what, that I gave it my all. There's nothing to hold my head about. Whether I come in first place or last place, if I know I gave it my best, there's nothing to regret. And I feel like a lot of people kind of half-ass it, so to speak. They go off track, they indulge, and then at the end of the day, when the show is done, they're filled with regret, and they wish they hadn't. They start beating themselves up internally for these things they could have done differently all along the way. And to me, that's like the worst feeling in the world. I don't ever want to experience it. I haven't ever experienced it at a show. Every time I've ever competed, I've known with absolute certainty that there's nothing else that I could have done with the knowledge that I had at that time, to make it better. And for me, that's huge. Like, knowing that I gave it my all is huge. So I encourage you, if you're in a contest prep, or if you have any goals in general, like, just don't walk the edge. Don't put yourself in a place to be tempted. Know what your priorities are, know what your goals are, and then attack that with absolute intensity. Because a 6-month prep, while that is a long prep, that is a blip on the timeline of your life. And if you can't stay true to your goals for 6 months, then how the hell are you going to stay true to your goals for a lifetime? Anyways, that's my rant on not deviating from the planned macros while at these festivities such as Christmas, Christmas Eve, New Year's, etc., etc. On a more tangible note, I want to talk about my weight. So these past 2 or 3 days, my weight has actually trended upwards a little bit. Again, kind of bringing things back to the macros. Like, if I know that I haven't cheated on my macros, it makes me much less concerned about my weight trending up, because I know that there's just a lot more control over the variables that I have, manipulation ability with. And if I'm cheating on my macros, my weight starts trending up, then I really start beating myself up and second-guessing myself. Whereas if my weight starts trending up and I know I haven't cheated on my macros, then I can start to really dig into why and then adjust course accordingly. So there's a couple different things here. I've been traveling a little bit with the holidays, so that's been a little stressful, and maybe just a little bit of water retention weight from inflammation of that. However, my protein is 190 grams this week, which is the highest it's been all contest prep. And my protocol is such that everybody's got like a protein threshold. Like when I'm eating in a surplus or a maintenance, my primary goal is building muscle. I'm able to take my protein much higher, but my fat grams are also much higher. Whereas now, my fat grams are dropping down while my protein's been increasing. So that's increased my protein ratio relative to my fat ratio. And then when you start getting into the nuances of it all, as my protein ratio increases and my calories are dropping, my fat is decreasing, at some point I'm going to notice some adverse effects. And those are going to look a little bit different for everybody, but for me, and some pretty typical effects are a little bit more weariness throughout the day, a little bit longer time to recover, higher blood glucose, or lower blood ketones, and just an increase in weight or a plateau in your weight dropping. And I just checked my ketones. I was at 1.4 this morning. I just checked my glucose. I was at 92, which is a little bit higher than I like to see it, but I tend to run a little higher in the mornings anyway, so I'm not like convinced that my protein threshold has been reached per se, but the weight trending upward a little bit is a little bit of a red flag that I'm getting close to my protein threshold. I've kind of tentatively mapped out my macro adjustments for the next several months, and I don't foresee myself going above 200 grams. So I'm going to increase another 5 grams next week and then another 5 grams the week after that, which will put me at 200 grams of protein, and that should be pretty close to my protein threshold. I'll have to check course, obviously, when I get there to see how my body's responded, but that's kind of what I'm thinking based off of just prior results and whatnot. So once I hit that 200 gram protein threshold, I'm going to start titrating protein back down, which my fat's going to continue to go down as well. So my total calories are still going to decrease. But out of curiosity, let me just pull up my macro tracker here. I'm curious to see what my protein ratio is now. So at the 190 grams of protein, and I'm at 235 grams of fat, that puts my ratio at about 70% of my calories are coming from fat, which is much lower than I typically prefer. My sweet spot's about 76 to 78% of my calories coming from fat. So right now I'm at the very low end of what I typically do at 70%. And it's going to drop even more when I hit that 200 gram protein mark. So for you, if you're watching this, if you're doing a contest prep, what I would encourage you to do is just kind of track these metrics, kind of know where your protein is, where your fat is, where your ratio is, and then kind of be, conscious of how you're feeling, what your blood glucose and ketones are doing, what your weight is doing. Because oftentimes, if you go through prep like I do, and you're titrating protein up in order to find that threshold, you'll start to notice some of these effects that I've been experiencing, such as the increase in weights. I'm probably going to hit that dip in blood ketones and that increase in blood glucose. And when I hit those other variables, I'll pretty much know with an absolute degree of certainty that I've hit that threshold. Again, let's just say my threshold is at 200 grams. That doesn't mean my overall protein threshold is at 200 grams. I'll sometimes go 250 grams, even 300 grams when I'm in a building phase. But again, my fat is much higher during that time. So it's all about the quantity, the gram quantity, in relation to the ratio of what your other macronutrients are doing. So always be mindful of that. Anyways, that's what I've got going on for week 8, and I'll holler back at you for week 9. I'll talk to you then.